I'm not an expert talking to you. I don't have a bunch of slides, and I found both Jen's and Malcolm's talks very illuminating and interesting. What I would like to do is stimulate some conversation and around this subject. It's interesting. This we're in a very difficult time, obviously, as musicians at the moment. Our income has been eroded, and by a virus, by governments who don't really have much respect for what we do, and don't value what we do. And we don't. Normally, our fallback might have been to look at record sales or whatever in the years when I were a lad, and we can't do that now either. So what is what do we do? Sounds like the job guarantee scheme is pretty necessary, actually, for certainly in our sector at the moment. Um, Streaming, we saw Napster and all that at the turn of the century, and but streaming really, there's about 1% of the revenues from music were from streaming. Not musicians' revenues, but I mean music money that was made generally out of music. 1% in 2005 to 80% last year. So, and it's just been a kind of, that kind of curve. I don't know if anybody has bought a CD recently, but it's becoming very much a thing of the past now. You can still buy them, and we still make them. And actually, if you get funding from Creative Scotland, you're expected to make a CD. I don't quite understand that, because it's not the way. It's not really the way forward. Streaming isn't a great way forward for us as musicians and composers, and publishers, and whatever rights owners at all either, because we don't really make much money from it. The Spotify is on the increase, and it is actually the big player. Interestingly, they charge a kind of sliding scale across the world in terms of what they for people who use their services. And the UK is the highest charge for what they use, for users, if you like. And it's tiny, actually, isn't it? And so here we are in this kind of terrible position where our income has been eroded, and there are different ways to make money out of residuals or royalties from music. You can make it as a composer and songwriter. So as the whole rights holder, if you like. You can make it as the person who owns the mechanical copyright on the recording. And you can make it through commission as well. And commissions, I think one of the problems with the whole streaming thing is it's pushed the value of what we do as musicians and composers and songwriters down so much now that when commissions are offered, if you get a television commission, for instance, to do something for a TV doc, you're expected to have all of the kind of means of production. You're expected to have the computer and all the software and the technology to record it and all of that, and you're paid a fairly relatively small amount of money then to make it. So commissioning income has also gone down if you're looking at television. Also, the income for composers, PRS income has been excuse me, eroded over quite a long period of time by producers. I don't mean music producers, but television producers and film producers who actually then own the rights. So the rights owners are no longer the musicians in that respect either. The rights owners become television and film producers. And there is a bit of a battle against that going on, and I've noticed sort of incremental improvements for people who are writing and composing. it's it's a very hard time, and that's what I'd like to talk about, is, you know, what do we do about this? How do we own our rights? How do we make the income that there is to be made out of people listening to our music? You know, you can, if you you know, you listen to, you used to be that you'd listen to the radio, you'd get PRS, for performances on the radio. You still do PPL as well, which is PRS is Performing Rights Society, PPL is Phonographic Performance Limited, and that was needle time on the radio. But all of that, now that we're streaming and we've got podcasts, we've got YouTube, we've got so many different ways to access music, there's also kind of downloads, if you like, and so, but the revenue from downloads has generally gone down hugely, and the percentage of people downloading music at whatever it is, 78 pence a track or whatever the cost of that is, to the percentage of people just streaming music at a very, very small cost. And I've got all the costs here, but you kind of know it. It's let's call it nothing. And has gone like that. You know, we're not even getting downloads. So CDs have gone pretty much. Downloads, not really happening that much, although, you know, you can download music from Amazon Music, you can download music from various suppliers, and people do that. Vinyl's great, of course. Vinyl's one of the last. It's a kind of cool thing. Put your record out on vinyl, do a limited run, and you can sell copies. But it's it is limited. You're not going to make your living from that. So certainly, as a in the last over this last 20 years, we've seen a shift from income coming from recording music and selling the recordings of your music. So actually creating this commodity, this product that you sell, as a musician, a composer, a writer, record company. There was all this kind of, there were all these kind of levels of industry that now don't exist. I was signed to Sony Music in 1998, and by 2001, this was a kind of pop thing when I was pretending to be cool and young, and by 2001, the arse had fallen completely out of that industry. It was amazing how quickly that went, and I was kind of one of the last signings in 1998. In that sense, and you know, you get your advance against publishing. I've still not recouped the advance that I got in 1998 on publishing, because the income is just gone, you know. So what do we do? What do we do? Do we create our own streaming platform? Could we do that? I've heard talk about the creation of a streaming platform for traditional music, for instance, as a specific thing. So where we kind of ring fence the streaming. Yes, we could do that. And there are platforms. There are, of course, you know, Bandcamp has been amazing through this lockdown, giving up its fees, all sorts of things, and people do make some money out of Bandcamp. But I don't feel like it's actually the real answer to this. And I think the problem with trying to compete with a Spotify, which, as we say, is so cheap. I mean, it's so cheap you can get it for nothing if you're prepared to have adverts. Could we compete with that? I don't know if we can. If we could get all the traditional musicians to lump themselves into a streaming platform that we create. So in all the traditional musicians, are we talking about all the Scottish traditional musicians? Do we have sector by sector, country by country, culture by culture streaming services? I don't see how that will work. People like to go to one-stop shops. People like to go to Spotify, where they can listen to you know, this is where I sound not very cool because I couldn't tell you who the current pop stars are, but where you listen to Eminem or whatever it is at the same time as being able to listen to Lau. And that's great for most people because we do discover things that way. You get other people's playlists. There's this fantastic kind of culture of sharing playlists, and you know, oh, here's my playlist, and you listen to it and you, oh, I've never heard that, and then you go into that, and it's a really interesting culture where you can it's a culture of discovery, with the likes of Spotify. So if we went into our own little kind of niche, and it would be small, niche streaming platform for Scottish traditional music, how do you then get discovered by people who don't think they like Scottish traditional music? So I kind of rule that one out. Perhaps the way to do it is to move into trying to campaign to to get some of the big names, some of those M&Ms, into a platform that's owned by musicians, and get them to boycott the other streaming services. So you get the buy-in of the big names into our traditional music thing, into jazz, into all sorts of things, and they go, right, we're going to support music, and by doing so, we will actually make more money from it. But that's also difficult because there still is a music industry where there's record companies and publishers who've got interests in some of these streaming companies, and so it's actually very hard might be quite difficult to create this world where we've managed to persuade the big names to come on board with all of us wee fellas. To sort of make our own streaming platform that competes with the big multi-genre streaming platforms. But maybe there is a way to do that. I mean, I've contacted the MU about this. I've talked to them, and they go, well, you know, it's very hard to get the buy-in of the big labels, blah blah blah. Perhaps the only way to do it is a kind of huge, a real campaign, and there are campaigns out there, and there are people making noises, and the MU itself does, but it doesn't seem to go much further than making noises at the moment. So I suppose what I'd like to talk about in a breakout session, and I'd like to hear what your ideas are in a breakout session, is about what we can do. How do we do this? How do we get control? Do we do it as a sector? Do we do it as the traditional music of Scotland sector, or Britain, or Europe, or whatever? Is there a way that we could create a platform? Do we have to boycott other platforms, or can we offer certain incentives? You know, like actual downloads that go with streaming services, or you know, what can we do? So there's my what if is, what if we knew what to do?